Go and tell him that if he can heal the princess, I and everyone in this kingdom will accept his God that is called Jesus. But if the princess dies, it will cost him his head and the head of anyone who professes the name of Jesus. If he can accept this term, he can come." That is what King Kumba said to the messenger who came to ask for permission on behalf of Father Julius, the man sent to bring the light of Christ to the great kingdom of Ukele. But wait, why did the priest send a messenger instead of coming by himself? And more importantly, will the witches of the kingdom, led by the queen herself, allow Father Julius to heal her daughter? Or will she choose her oath to darkness over the life of her own child? Keep watching to see what happens when power jam power. Before we continue this interesting story, please subscribe and like this video so we can shame the devil and proclaim the power of God. Comment where you're watching from and what time it is over there. I just learned that different places have different time. 2 years before this moment, Father Julius had already asked to be sent to Ukele. He was not yet a priest then, only preparing for ordination. The bishop looked at him with sharp eyes and said no. Why? Because for many years no priest that entered Ukele ever came out alive. The people whispered about a god called Okoko, who demanded blood. They said every month a child must be sacrificed, chosen by the chief priest. Any priest who dared to resist was captured, tortured, and killed to satisfy Okoko's anger. The bishop refused to risk another man of God. But Julius was stubborn. His heart burned for this land. He prayed, he fasted, and he begged heaven to open the way. Little did he know that his journey to Ukele had started long before he was even born. You see, 28 years ago, King Kumba secretly fathered a child with one of his maids. The king never knew. That same month, the gods, through the queen and her chief priest, demanded a newborn sacrifice. And they pointed to the maid's baby boy. From that day forward, the kingdom entered a dark covenant. Every month a baby was offered to Okoko, blood after blood, tear after tear. The land of Ukele grew rich in fear and poor in mercy. But here is the mystery. That first sacrifice was not what everyone thought. The maid was taken into the inner chamber with the chief priest. She handed her baby over, tears streaming down her face. What truly happened that night, only the chief priest and the maid knew. The people believed the child was gone. But the maid disappeared the next morning, and no one ever spoke of her again. What happened to that child? Nobody asked. Nobody cared. Now, Father Julius was no ordinary man. He was found as a baby at the gate of a parish house, with nothing but a cloth around his body and a strange scar across his chest, like a burn. A priest had raised him as his own, teaching him the ways of God, guiding him through hunger, pain, and prayer. Julius grew up with courage and an unshakable faith. He never knew who his parents were, never knew the story of his birth. He only knew one thing: the gospel must be preached, and light must conquer darkness. And so when he heard about Ukele and the sacrifices, he could not rest. He wanted to be there. He wanted to break the chain. He wanted to bring the people to Christ, even if it cost him his life. When the time finally came, Father Julius was ordained, and he sent a messenger to King Kumba to seek entry into the land. That is when the king gave his terrifying reply: "Heal my daughter, and the kingdom will follow you. Fail, and you will not leave here alive." The messenger carried these words back to Julius, and the priest bowed his head in prayer. He knew the risk, but he also knew his mission. He stepped forward, staff in hand, and began the journey into Ukele. But he was not walking into ordinary trouble. The queen of Ukele was no normal queen. She was the leader of the witches, sworn to protect Okoko's altar. She had seen Julius in her visions, and she trembled because his coming meant her downfall. So she began to plot. She gathered her coven, she summoned spirits, and she delayed him with every power she could call. Soldiers blocked his path. Strange winds tore at his feet. At night he heard voices whispering in the dark, urging him to turn back, but he pressed forward. Every delay only increased his hunger for victory. Yet the queen had one last card to play. Before Julius could reach the palace, the princess, the only daughter of the king, died. The land wailed in sorrow. The drums of mourning thundered. The queen put on a mask of tears, but inside her heart she smiled. She wanted the girl dead, for with the princess gone, she could eventually rule as queen without challenge. When Father Julius finally arrived, he found himself surrounded by soldiers. They did not welcome him with joy, but with whips. They accused him of delay. They shouted that his god had failed, and before he could even defend himself, he was flogged brutally and thrown into the prison. Inside the dark cell, Julius groaned in pain but lifted his voice in prayer. He did not know that outside the queen was celebrating. The king mourned bitterly, the people cried, and hope was buried with the princess. But was the story really over? No. For in the shadows, the maid, the same one who had once lost a baby to the gods, was still alive. And when she saw Julius's chest, when she brought him food in prison and noticed the scar across his body, her heart almost stopped. That scar was the same scar her baby had carried. Could it be? Could this man of God be her lost son, the one who should have been sacrificed 28 years ago? She rushed to the king, her heart pounding. The kingdom was mourning, the queen was scheming, and Julius was locked away in chains. But the truth was about to break open like thunder, and when it did, Ukele would never be the same again. Hope you've subscribed, because it's about to get very interesting. The king sat in his chamber, mourning bitterly for his only daughter. His crown lay forgotten on the floor, his robe soaked with tears. Courtiers whispered in fear, for they had never seen the great King Kumba so broken. While the palace mourned, the queen pretended to comfort him. She wept loudly, but in her heart she was rejoicing, for she thought the game was over. The princess was gone, Father Julius was in chains, and the covenant with Okoko would continue without resistance. But then the maid entered quietly, her hands trembling, her lips pale. She fell before the king and cried, "My lord, before you bury hope forever, give the priest one more chance. Let him speak, let him pray. Do not silence him yet." The king lifted his tired eyes and looked at her. At first he wanted to dismiss her words, but something in her voice pierced his heart. Could this woman be carrying a truth he did not know? He remembered her face, faintly, from long ago. She had once served in the palace before she vanished. Why had she returned now? He nodded slowly, though the queen's eyes flashed with hidden anger. "Bring the priest," the king commanded. "Let me hear his voice before I bury my daughter forever." The guards dragged Julius out of the prison. His body was bleeding, his robe torn, but his spirit burned brighter than ever. He stood before the king, leaning on his staff, and spoke with boldness. "O king, your throne is shaken not by me but by the darkness that rules this land. You have shed innocent blood for 28 years, but today God will show you that he is greater than Okoko." The king's council murmured. Some mocked him, others trembled. Julius lifted his hands and began to pray. His voice thundered in the hall. The queen shrieked silently, summoning her powers to stop him, but her spells fell like dust. Suddenly, a deafening thunder cracked across the sky. The ground shook. Outside in the royal cemetery, the earth split open. The grave of the princess burst apart and the people screamed. For the princess, wrapped in burial cloth, was rising again. The king fell to his knees, weeping in awe. The courtiers shouted in confusion. Some cried out, "The God of Julius is mighty." The queen dropped her crown and began scratching her skin as if fire was burning from inside her. She screamed, I will confess," and ran into the hall, her body trembling violently. Before all the people, she shouted her secrets. "I killed the princess. I made her sick. I did it because I wanted the throne, and more. 28 years ago, I conspired with the chief priest to kill the king's son. I knew he would grow to destroy me, so I commanded the priest to cast him into the fire. But he lived, and he stands before us now." The hall fell into silence. All eyes turned to Julius. The king looked at him with shock, his lips shaking. The maid stepped forward with tears in her eyes. She pulled open Julius's torn robe and pointed to the scar on his chest. "This is the mark," she cried. "This is my child. The child I bore you, O king." He was never consumed by fire. I carried him away that night, and God preserved him to this day. Father Julius is your son." The king staggered back, unable to breathe. His only daughter, dead yet alive again before his eyes. His long-lost son, standing as the very priest he had threatened to kill. The witches exposed, their queen humiliated, the whole land frozen in shock. And in that moment, the covenant with Okoko shattered. The people rushed to the shrine and set it on fire, burning every idol, every charm, every altar that had held them in bondage. The flames rose high as the cries of worship to Christ filled the air. "Jesus is Lord! Jesus is King of Ukele!" The queen fell to the ground, her power gone, her face covered in shame. The chief priest tried to run but was seized by the people. The king embraced Julius, tears running down his face. "My son, forgive me, I did not know." But Julius shook his head gently. "Do not give me your throne, Father. Let the throne belong to Jesus. He is the true king, not me." The people roared in amazement. Who rejects a crown? Who rejects power? But Julius had already chosen his crown in heaven. From that day forward, Ukele was changed forever. No more sacrifices of children, no more blood for Okoko, no more fear in the night. The story of Father Julius spread far and wide. Some called him a prince, others called him a priest, but all agreed on one truth. He was the man God raised to deliver a kingdom from darkness. The king lived his final years in peace, with both his daughter restored and his son standing by him. And when he passed, the people asked Julius to rule. But he refused again, lifting his staff and declaring, "Let Jesus be king forever." And so the kingdom of Ukele was never the same. The people lived in freedom, and the scar on Julius's chest became a symbol, not of pain, but of destiny. For what the devil meant for death, God turned into life. And the land that once burned children for Okoko now burns.
Let us unite in faith and strength, guided by this symbol of hope.